You're listening to Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal with Matthew Tobe.
All right, my name is Matt. I want to thank you for joining us today on Rise Up, stories of addiction, recovery, resilience, and renewal. My guest today is an old dear friend of mine. He's such an amazing man, Winn Claybaugh, who I met years ago at a conference, and we've hit it off ever since. I want to thank you, Winn, for joining me today, and let's dive right into it because you've got so much to talk about, so much to say, so much you've done, and I really just want to have everyone just listen to what you got to say, and let's see how we can help as many people as we can today. All right?
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't take this for granted at all.
Well, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So let's tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Let's start off with, start with the now and work our way back and then up and through. So what do you do now? Who are you? What do you do? And we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm the dean of Palm Mitchell Schools. I co-founded the company over 20 years ago. So but I've actually been in the beauty industry. Yeah, I'm in the hair industry, as you can see. I like your haircut, by the way.
Yeah, I learned from you.
So I've been in the beauty industry for 40 years. So we have about over 100 Palm Mitchell schools, about 12,000 students a year that attend our schools, which is why, to tell you the truth, this topic of addiction and recovery and anything to do with mental health and wellness is a very important topic, considering the fact that I have a very large circle of influence. And so I know that this topic is huge, and especially in the world that we live in right now, it's very important. In addition to that, I'm also a dad. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I certainly love talking about her because that's a foundation that serves me well and absolutely keeps me focused and connected and on purpose. Yeah, I also just started another company called Salty Dog Pet Grooming. So
Nice.
we're up to about 30 locations around the U.S., and that's kind of an exciting project as well. So, always busy, always hustling, always doing what I need to do to stay relevant and to stay active and energized. I'm 63 years old, and so
Wow.
yeah, so I don't take my energy for granted. It's something that I have to work at harder and harder every
Well,
single day.
you definitely don't look 63. So let's start with this, and we'll get to everything else that we've been through, we've done. You are an avid fitness fanatic. You are up early in the morning every day.
Yeah, my routine is I'm up by 4:30 every morning because my daughter's up at 6. And
Right.
so I want to have a good hour and a half, and sometimes I'm up by 4 because I want to have that time for me to get ready before she gets up, because I don't want to try to be waking up when she's trying to wake up. So
Yeah.
my job is to be fully present and fully engaged and in working really, really hard to create great energy and space for her to then start her day. So, once she's up at 6 o'clock, it's no phone zone. It's focused on her, getting her ready for school. And so I need a couple of hours in the morning of just kind of putzing around, puttering. I
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
word, puttering. Sometimes I'm on email, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm just playing good music and lighting candles and feeding the dogs and getting coffee and just kind of relaxing, rearranging furniture, whatever I feel like doing, because I feel like it's during that time of puttering where nothing is going on, that some of my best ideas happen.
Always when because you're not thinking about it. They just kind of happen.
Right, and nobody needs me at that time of the day. That's
Right.
like I like working out in the morning because everybody needs me at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody needs me at 5 in the
Right.
morning. So that's the
Absolutely.
best time to focus on me.
100%. So we did the same thing in our house. Granted, we got teenagers, so they're not up. They don't know that there's more than one six a day. They're a 6 p.m. person. That
Got it.
6 a.m. doesn't happen for them yet.
Got
We
it.
tried, didn't happen. So let's go. So you're doing such amazing things, and we'll come back to a lot of what you're doing now. But let's go back. Let's go. So you've been doing this for 40 years in the hair industry. Let's go back to where the addiction recovery really kind of hit its head, and then we'll kind of come up through history, because the purpose of us discussing this and talking about this is I want to give our listeners and our viewers the opportunity to see that it's not just about, the addiction then stopping. It's about what we can do afterwards. And I've yet to meet somebody who doesn't have a fantastic story, whether it's this big or this big, after their recovery has occurred, and you know the changes they've made and the effect they've had on other people, whether it's one person or tens and hundreds of thousands. So let's go back. Go back to your addiction. I mean, I know we haven't talked about it a lot, but let's really kind of dive into that for a few minutes and then travel forward through time.
Okay. First of all, before we started recording, I told Matt that I put probably a good 10 hours into preparing for this, and I do podcasts all the time, and so the need to put time into preparing for this, and the reason why is because I've never really talked about my story. I constantly share with people that I'm 20 years clean, and I have no problem sharing that part, but to go into the details of it, I haven't done. And this is the first time, which is why I felt like I needed to prepare. Oh, and by the way, in case any of you are wondering, my backdrop there is the set from Golden Girls. So maybe some of you already knew that and you're thinking, why does he have Golden Girls? Why is he sitting in the Golden Girls living room? Because I felt like I needed to lighten up this conversation a little bit and add a little bit of joy. And by the way, I watch the Golden Girls every single night as I'm falling asleep. That's like my white noise to turn off my mind, and I go to sleep happy because the Golden Girls make me happy. So there you go. So I have kind of two parts of my story of recovery. I am 20 years clean off of drugs, but I didn't stop drinking at that time, and the only alcohol consumption that I had was wine. So I would have a couple of glasses of wine at dinner. I've been 5 years alcohol free. Now I know that in the world of addiction and recovery, if you're not fully off of drugs and alcohol, then you're really not clean. And I get that. And so, don't send me nasty emails about that, but I'm just telling you my story. And so I stopped doing drugs 20 years ago and alcohol 5 years ago.
Okay. And just we talk about that. I mean, it's come up in the past. Last year was a big one. I think it was Selena Gomez that said, she was California sober, where she didn't do drugs, but she drank. And that's become a big thing. But I'm also noticing there's a lot of people at this point in time, because we're learning more things about psilocybin and marijuana and how it helps certain things. And so what people do for their own sobriety at different levels works for them, right?
Right.
Glasses of wine here and there. I know people who do ayahuasca retreats and whatnot who are still clean from everything else they did. So it is a fine line, and I don't hold people to what they do. But sobriety is sobriety, clean is clean, whatever works for you. So just
Right.
put that out there. I want my listeners to know that as well. And we've had people on the podcast who have been like, listen, just so you know, I don't want to be on there because I'm like, no. This is what you did. This is what you're doing. This is where you're at. So let's talk about that.
It's interesting that people want to shoot the messenger. They're like, well, okay, he's clean off of drugs, but he still drinks wine. Therefore, I don't care what he has to say.
It's, you know what? That's like when a personal trainer tells you this is what works to get a strong core and get really strong abs, and then the person walks over, lifts their shirt up, but doesn't see a six pack, and says, "Well, I'm not going to listen to you.
Right.
What do you know?" Right? So the knowledge is there. So yeah, it's don't shoot the messenger, because we've all had so many things that we've done. And my biggest thing, again, with my addiction, I was a drinker, right? I didn't really do any. I mean, I smoked weed here and there, but I didn't do anything crazy. My thing was I was a full-time, it was my job, drinker. So for me, sobriety was that, right? If I was a hard drug user, that would have been my sobriety. So it all depends.
Right.
So you've been 20 years sober, clean. So let's go to that.
Yeah. So, and getting off of drugs, that was quite a process. It was getting a divorce. That was necessary for me to get clean off of drugs. That was moving out of my beautiful home and into a really dumpy apartment. And I'll tell you something, I was never happier to walk away from that beautiful home with an ocean view, sitting on a cliff. I mean, to walk away from that was like one of the happiest days of my life. And
Wow.
then again to move into this apartment that was just disgusting. There was vomit on the elevator all the time, and that and I didn't care. I was just so happy to be rid of that horrible relationship and anything that had to do with that. So it
Right.
was a new circle of friends. I mean, everybody knows that story, and I remember needing to have that conversation about divorcing myself from people that I had that past drug lifestyle with. That it wasn't a judgment on them. It wasn't that I'm now better than they are, and that's why I stay away from those people. It was that I loved myself enough to stay away. I needed to love myself enough to stay away from the people that I had that drug lifestyle with. And I know that hurts people and that offends people, and there's a lot of confusion in making those kinds of decisions, but it's what I needed to do. Now, getting clean off of alcohol, stopping alcohol consumption was a very interesting process because uh, everybody assumed that there was some backstory like because you make that announcement. I'm never going to drink alcohol. I've just made the decision. I'm never going to drink again. I'll tell you something, Matt. I rarely, and I mean rarely, received a positive response about that. First of
Right.
all, well, a lot of people were very angry about that. Well, maybe angry is a little strong, but they were not happy about my decision. Like
Okay.
I guess assuming that I wouldn't be fun or that I would judge them for drinking or that they could no longer drink around me or
Yeah.
I don't know what the thought process was. And also a lot of judgment. It wasn't like, wow, Win, good for you. It was like, oh, really? Wow. Okay. Is there a backstory here? How many DUIs is this
Yeah. There's always
court
something
ordered?
monumentous.
Exactly. Rather than, what, I just want to make that change in my life. Again, I was in my late 50s, approaching my 60s, thinking, you know what, I'm a dad. I want to do something. I'm at the gym every single day. I get 8 hours of sleep every single night. And I wanted to make some type of, I didn't need to lose a bunch of weight, but I wanted to make some type of a major change, a
Hmm.
major shift in my life. And the only thing that I could really come up with, well, not the only thing, but one of the major things that I could come up with was alcohol. I'm gonna stop drinking alcohol.
Okay.
And I read a book called Sober Curious, which I'm sure you're
Mhm.
you're familiar with, and that was an important. I had a couple of other friends that were supportive, and they have their stories of addiction and recovery, and so I reached out to a couple of people to help me through the process. But I'll tell you something. I thought that it was going to be easier than it really turned out to be. I thought that, it's just going to be a decision. I'm just going to make the decision. I'm not going to drink anymore. Of course, then the next day I'm like, where the hell's my drink of wine?
Right.
Like,
We, it's there. We don't realize like it's.
no,
I read a great thing yesterday. Actually, it was if you want to understand what it's like to give up alcohol, put your phone down for 24 hours in plain sight, but don't pick it up and see
that's
how
interesting.
fight that urge to pick up that phone and look at it. Turn all the notifications, turn everything off, but keep it on and leave it there. And that's that like, oh my goodness.
Well, soon after I had made that decision, I went on a vacation to New York City. So I'm there in New York City, staying at a great hotel and going to the best restaurants. And of course, the wine connoisseur comes out and explains, and I'm sitting there like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do with myself? And so actually got into tea. Who knew that there's a whole culture behind drinking tea? And so
Yeah.
I would have I don't know what you call it. What do you call a tea expert?
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, see, yeah, we don't know. We don't know.
I'll come
So
up with something, but it's not going to come
there
off
you go.
very good.
Well, so at some fine restaurants, they have the tea guy come over,
Yeah.
and he would explain to me the different teas, and so I just got into the whole paraphernalia of and culture of the type of tea I would drink and how it was prepared and all of that, and it was funny because it was towards the end of the year, and of course that Christmas nobody knows what to buy me for Christmas, and so everybody bought me anything to do with tea,
Right.
right? And but the thing is that lasted for a couple of months. It was the crutch that I needed, and maybe
Mhm.
that's the wrong word, but it's what I needed to get me over that process of the ritual of drinking wine. There's a ritual. Sober Curious
Mm.
talks about that. How much of our life revolves around drinking. I had a stressful day. Let's go for a drink. I had
Yep.
a wonderful day. Let's go have a drink. I have a blind date coming up. I need a drink. Right? How much of our society is focused on that ritual of let's get together and have a drink.
Yep.
Well, when you don't do that anymore, and yet you're still hanging out with people, and you don't want to necessarily divorce yourself from that experience, from that ritual, it was tea that helped me get over that. So everybody else is drinking, and I'm drinking my fabulous tea, and that's what I needed to do for a couple of months. And after that, it was fine. It was easy.
Yeah, it's funny you did that. We did tea as well. Tea became a big thing in our house when I got sober 17 years ago. It was the steeping, it was the put it into the holder. It's a process, it's a ritual. It's funny you say the society we're in and the culture we're in. I didn't know it at the time, especially TV growing up and watching movies and whatnot. I was great. My favorite character wasn't even invented yet, but I wanted to live the life of Don Draper. I want in my mind, you came up for work. That's what you did. That way, growing up, there was no Don Draper in my life. There was no show about it. But
Right.
that's what I saw when I got married. And I remember picturing what my life would be like, dating my wife, my fiance, and what our place is going to look like. And I remember thinking, I'm going to have a wet bar because that's what you did.
Right.
And
Right.
funnily enough, I actually took an old 70s hi-fi unit with the speakers on the side and you lift the lid up, and I converted it myself into a wine and liquor bar with, open the speaker and my glasses were there. And it was
Almost
funny.
like an altar, like some place you go to worship, right?
It pretty much it
Right.
was, and they were so. And then I look, and then Mad Men comes out, and it's like, oh my god, that character is who I believed needed to be, and it takes place at a time where my cabinet, which is what from that era. But it's funny the culture behind it, and it's like you said, people don't realize when you announce you're going to quit drinking. Mine wasn't an announcement that I was going to; it was that I had stopped. And I actually, when you mentioned if maybe people thought you weren't going to be as fun when you stopped drinking, we have a friend of ours and we go over all the time, and every single time he'd say, Matt, what are you drinking tonight? I'm like, just water or ginger ale, whatever you got. He's like, no, what beer? I'm like, I've never had a beer with you. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I haven't had a drink in years. I didn't know you when I drank. He's like, huh, it's funny. I always have such fond memories and we have the best, most fun times. I always assume there's alcohol involved.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, I'm like, that's a compliment to me. Clearly not needing the alcohol anymore to be fun and funny. So you
All right.
quit drinking 5 years, is it 5 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. So going back, the trend, did you feel when you had, stepped away from your life and you got divorced, you walked away from your home, and how did you clean up? How did you go through rehab? Did you go through any step program, or it was just, I'm done?
What's so funny is as long before I became drug free, I was studying 12-step type programs. I was studying curriculum and reading books, even though at the time I was doing that, I had no intention of getting clean or sober at all. It was just, for me, it was a genuine spiritual path. And I
Okay.
was looking for a genuine spiritual path. I was raised in a very strict, predominant religious family, and when I left that, I felt a void, and I needed to fill that with some type of a belief system. And I was certainly didn't want it to be anything organized. I didn't want it to be an altar inside of a building of where I went to worship. It had to be something very, very different to get as far away from that as I possibly could. And so I was searching different paths, and 12 step was one of those. Um,
Okay.
Now, when it was time for me to become drug free and then again alcohol free, no, there was no rehab, and all I can say is um, it was grace. It was grace that entered my life. Again, with alcohol. there were no DUIs.
Mhm.
There was no car crashes. There was no finding me naked on the side of the road, out of my none of that existed. Now, when it comes to drugs, there's a horrific story, and some of that story I've shared and with personal friends, and some of it I've never shared. But I'm a go getter. So if I'm the type of person that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be the best at it. I was the youngest Eagle Scout, in my community at very young age, and I had 3 paper routes at a very young age, and saved up enough money to buy an apartment fourplex when I was 18 years old. So I've always been a very very incredible go getter. The same applied to being a drug addict. If I'm going to be a drug addict, I'm going to be the best drug addict there is, and I was very very good at it.
And that is
So becoming drug free, what I can say is it was by grace. It truly, truly was by grace because looking back on what I went through, I should have been dead a couple of times with my behavior and what I was doing and how I was putting myself at risk. I really should have been dead. And all I can say is, God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, uh, had a different plan for me,
right.
and that plan was to use that story because I know that I do now have a story to tell, and that story saves lives. That story helps people. That story um, motivates me. I mean,
Yeah.
thinking back on what I've been through, I know that it makes me a better husband. It makes me a better father, knowing that that's my past. But what got me there, I just have to say it was grace. Some power stepped in and took over.
Which I'll be honest with you, I think that for most people that I've spoken to, most people that I know who've gone through, stages of recovery, it is always by grace. Whether that grace has pushed you through the doors of a rehab center or a 12-step program, it's not. You reach that point of everybody I know who's gotten clean kind of reached that level of I got to do like I'm done. I'm tired of doing this. Like you know, because you can go and I know people have gone to rehab multiple times, and it doesn't take until we know this it doesn't take till they're ready for it to take.
Right.
It's there's got to be a whole bunch of things that kind of fit into place, and knowing hopefully at that point that if you don't stop, you're not going to be here anymore, right? And
Right.
again that grace that comes along. I know for me it was the same thing. I went to rehab, but it was funny. I stopped drinking on the 21st of December, but I didn't enter a program until February 15th.
Wow.
So I quit drinking, but it was one of those where I had to, I did do a weekly program, but it was that I wanted to learn more. Like why did I drink? What was my why behind this? And why do I want to stay sober? So let me ask you that. What was your why? Like, the why is the big question that I think so many of us have. You know, Simon Sinek says, what's your why? Start with why. With us, in terms of recovery, the why is for me, why did I do it? And why am I no longer doing it?
Hmm.
So where are you there? What's your why?
My why of why I was doing drugs.
Let's start with whatever you're comfortable with. Why did you stop? Why do you no longer do drugs? Why did you want that change?
I knew that uh, I knew that I had a voice. I knew that for some reason that I had this God-given skill or this talent that when I speak, for whatever reason, people listen to me. So again, I've been clean for 20 years, but I've owned my company for 40 years. And I was a motivational speaker on the road, and then of course come home on the weekends doing drugs. So here I am during the week having influence with audiences giving me a standing ovation. So whatever I said, they did. And it occurred to me one day, if people are following me, they're going to follow me into this. If I'm influencing people and I have that power to influence, where am I going to lead people? And that's and I knew that I had a purpose. I knew that I had this power and this gift to to influence people, and I wanted to make sure that it was going to be leading them down the right path. I today, and maybe I'm judging, but today I know of very powerful leaders who make a ton of money and have a huge following. And I think, but gosh, your personal life is that you're a deadbeat dad.
Right.
Your personal life is that your fitness isn't what it needs to be. You know, you're making a ton of money and you're hugely obese, or you're still a smoker, which, you know, anybody who's a smoker past a certain age, I'm like, really? Really?
I
You're
mean,
still a
past
smoker?
an age, I see young kids smoking. I'm like, who does this still?
Right.
But that's I think my most judgmental thing to date. If you drink, if you relapse, if you, I get it. But I look at it, you smoke? Like it's one that I just don't understand anymore.
Well, you know, over the weekend, you hear about these celebrities that, New Year's Eve, they were out drinking, husband and wife drinking, and the wife hits the husband, and so the husband hits the wife, and oh, we're so sorry. They're in their 60s, but of course, alcohol was involved. I'm
Right.
like, really? There are cameras rolling. TMZ is following you. You know that. You
Yeah.
you don't you don't kn- like that's the message you want to send out.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a famous singer, a famous actor, or a famous whatever. You have a stage, and by the way, we all have a stage. All of
Yeah.
us are on a stage, whether we realize this or not. People are watching us. You don't have to have TMZ on your trail to know that somebody's watching and that cameras are rolling. The cameras are rolling. People are watching you, and what message are you sending out? And
Yeah.
I just, which was again my big motivation. I didn't want my daughter to ever see me drunk. I didn't want my daughter to
Yeah.
ever see me with a hangover. Like, I can't fully be present with you while you're getting ready for school because I have a little bit of a headache from last
Right.
night. I didn't want that anymore.
That's so much. There's so much there, and that's an amazing why. Like that's I we have an open family when it comes to this. Our kids all we talk about it. I remember last year we had a really big to do about my 16th anniversary of sobriety, and we really we just had fun with it because it was for about 6 months leading up to it. It became a big conversation. The kids knew I didn't drink and they knew why, but we never really discussed it. You know, as they got older, I'd tell each one individually, and I remember saying, "Well, let's have something big." And my middle one turned around and said, "I know, we should get Dad his favorite bottle of wine." And he didn't do it like
Right.
without thinking about it. He was making a joke about it, where he goes, "Oh,
Right.
we should go on a pub crawl." Right. And it was just that fun stuff. And I remember, in this at the beginning of the year, my son took, when we dropped off at university, we went back a week later to go visit them, five guys in the dorm. And we walk in, the floor was sticky. And all of his friends also know about my past. And I looked at him, I said, why? I'm like, "Hey, why is the floor sticky?" And they said, "Oh," his friend says, roommate says, "Oh, we were shotgunning beers last night." He goes, "So Matt, shotgunning." And I looked at him, I said, "Okay, I don't drink anymore, right?" He's like, "Yeah." I go, "You know why, right?" He said, "Yep." I said, "Do you think you need to explain what that is to me?" Like, I said, "I'll give you a couple tips if you want. I really don't think they have to go the other way." And it
Right.
was, we joke about that all the time where it's like, you know, it's okay. And even my friends of ours say, "Well, if your kids, what are you going to do if they drink?" And I'm like, "I'll be there for them if they need me."
Right.
That's, I'm not going to, this is their life. They're going to have to decide if they like it. And we laugh, when my son went to university, we brought him his little mini fridge. And we get there, he's like, "Oh, Dad, we're not allowed that in the dorm." But then why'd you ask for it? He said, "Well, everyone's got it." So there we are, me. I'm the one who's hiding the cans of hard lemonade into his refrigerator. I'm like, "Does anybody see anything wrong with this?" And I'm the guy. And they're like, "Well, you're probably the best at hiding this stuff. So yeah, you are the guy." So it's the jokes there, but again, having that why behind it. The kids also know why I don't, why I won't. And again, like you, I don't want them to see me hungover or forgetful, or it's a big thing. Like none of Ryan was the only one, my oldest one, and he was a year and a half, right? But nobody else has seen me drink, right?
Right.
So it's funny. So you say that. So that's awesome. So that's your why there. So you're drug free. You've done all you can. You're a motivational speaker, which, by the way, if anybody has ever a chance to see you speak, you're so good. when I see you, I'm like, it was like my moment. I loved it. The first time I got to hear you speak and see you speak. So from there, where did we go? So you've got your company that you've done great at. You're now clean off of drugs. You're still drinking, which is wine. Um, I mean, let's touch about where do we go from there? What has happened since you cleaned up? I know we've got a book you wrote years ago, which um, I got right here. I love this book. Um,
Thank you.
if you ever want to get it, it is hard to find still, but it is good. Win, do you have any more books in you? Because Be Nice or Else is such an amazing book, and I
You
love it. I've read
know,
it a few times.
well, again, we were talking about that about hustling,
Yeah,
and for some reason, people think that hustle is a negative thing. It means that you are manipulating people to get what you want at their expense, and I've never seen hustling as being anything other than, I hustle at the gym every day. I hustle in being a dad. Going back to my big why of why I no longer want to drink alcohol. Again, being a dad, and and I wanted to be fully present. I know that it's very important that when you become clean and alcohol free, that you do it for yourself. And they will tell you that part of recovery is you're not doing this for somebody else, you're doing this for yourself. Um, but at the end of the day, I'm also doing it for my daughter. I want to be a
right.
really good. Not only do I want to be a really good dad, I want to be present for everything. I've been the. She's in fifth grade now, and I've been the room parent every single year except for 1 year. 1 year they didn't choose me, and I think I might have threatened them that they better choose me again. By the way, out of all the room parents in my daughter's school, I'm the only dad.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, it's me and a bunch of moms, and that makes me want to start drinking again, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, but so not just in name only that I'm a dad, that I really want to be present. I want to say yes, and I want to show up to everything. I believe that the best teachers, the best leaders are storytellers.
Mhm.
And many times the story that we tell is a story of falling down and picking ourselves back up. Like the first time that I shared with anybody that I was struggling or that I had become drug free. So I had only been drug free for a couple of months, and then I'm booked on a stage in front of 1,000 people. Only a couple of months, and those of us who are in the world of addiction and recovery, you need a good year
Yeah.
behind you before move apartments or change jobs or make life decisions, or and here I am, and it slipped out a couple of months clean off of drugs, and it slipped out on stage in front of 1,000 people that I had just stopped doing drugs. Okay. And there was, Matt, there was a gasp from the audience because
Right.
this audience knew who I was. There was this gasp from the audience, and on stage I'm thinking, what have I just done?
Right.
I just exposed myself. They all think that I'm a fraud right now. And I remember going off that stage just thinking, I'm done. And what immediately happened was a couple of people came backstage, and they weren't what I thought they would be. They weren't angry and how dare you, you're a fraud. They were like, my God, Win, you? Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Because if you in your position can overcome that and still stand on this stage, maybe there's hope for me. Maybe there's hope for my son. Maybe there's hope for my friend. And it was, that word hope
Mhm.
has become really important to me because we sell lots of things. In my school, we sell tuition, we sell a career, we sell shampoo, we sell books, we sell all kinds of things. But if what I'm really selling is hope, then that's a life worth living. Because people can be down and out
Yeah.
in every way. They can be at their very lowest. But if there's just a small glimmer of hope, well, then we can do something with that.
Yeah.
And if that's what I can do when I stand on a stage, and that stage can be in front of just one person, it can be a stage as a dad, it can be as a speaker in front of thousands of people. If that's what I can sell from my stage is uh, providing hope for people, then that's my purpose. That's a huge big part of my why. So when you ask me, what's next? If there's another book, it would be about that. It would be maybe not another book. I don't know. You see me sitting here. I can't sit still.
Right.
To have to sit. I know. I'm constantly moving around. To sit still and
It's
write
a hard
another
one.
book. I don't know. But podcasts and on the road and social media postings. Go to my social media. You'll never find anything negative. You're
Yeah.
never going to find anything about the Real Housewives. That stuff is not part of the world that I live in. I stay far, far away from that. People try to post negative, gossipy things on my social media, and I delete those people. And people are like, but Winn, that's just freedom of speech. I'm like, no, it's not. Not on my platform.
Yeah,
I worked
exactly.
hard. I worked hard to build a brand, and my name, Winn Claybaugh, is also my brand, and that brand stands for something. And I'm going to use my stage, my platform, my influence in spreading really, really good news. And so maybe not another book, but I'm constantly going to be broadcasting because I
Yeah.
have a lot to say. I have a lot to share.
And your podcast is amazing. Then I will have links to that as well in the liner notes. And I listen to that a lot. Um, so and everything you do say and all that you've done. So I like that hope. So let's fast forward a bit because it's not just. I mean, that's amazing. Like, first of all, I'll just go back. I think I remember hearing you tell that story once on a stage about when you first spoke about it. And what amazes me is and it's who you are. Your heart is on your sleeve, and you are the most positive person I know, and happy. And your reaction hasn't changed from when I first heard you say that over 10 years ago,
Hmm.
right? Like that's what I love about you, where you just have that. This is who you are, and so that love of helping other people and being that glimmer of hope, that's transferred over on top of your social media and your podcast and your business in general to your philanthropic work. So you're really, really, you are a helping hand to so many, myself included. So let's talk, because again, we know about the addiction, we know about recovery, but it's all the great things that we get to inspire other people with since that moment, right? We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now if we don't, if we didn't get recovery. I know that myself, when I would, when I post things, and I talk a lot about recovery and my own story, and it's done with purpose, because every time I do it, the amount of messages I get from people who, again, you would never think had a problem, I get, hey, I think I have a problem, or just so you know, I stopped drinking 3 months ago because of this post, and your continual talk about how great things are on the other side of it. And I just wanted to stop. Right. So
Right.
when we tell our stories and we're able to be that glimmer of hope, like you said, that stage we're always on, and we are always on that stage. Um, let's talk about the stage you're on now, because I love the stage you're on now. You've done so much. I definitely want to talk about your gala, which is so big, but let's talk about your philanthropic work. What have you been doing? Where's your passion sitting there and helping others and changing lives?
Can I first want to comment on what you were just saying about sharing our stories. I think, again, when we share our stories of what we've been through, the best leaders are storytellers, and the stories that we tell do help other people. And I think that maybe some people think that they have to share their entire story.
Right.
So they think, well, yes, I'm recovered, I'm drug free, I'm alcohol free, but I don't want to tell anybody because I don't want them to know every detail. And I don't believe that you have to share every
Hmm.
detail. I'll tell you, I'm very, very grateful. I have friends a good friend, Jason Schneidman. He's called the men's groomer. He does James Corden's hair for his TV show and a lot of other celebrities. He's a great guy. Jason Schneidman tells just the down and dirty, every single ugly detail of his addiction. I mean, he gets into it, as well as the recovery side of it. I'm grateful for that. That's not me.
Right.
That's not me. There are parts of my story. I mean, I shared with you that I probably should have been dead. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you what that meant. You know, people say, what does he mean? Tell us more. I'm not going to tell you more. I've told some people I'm not going to share that publicly. So
Right.
I don't feel like we have to tell our entire stories. Maybe just the fact that we are clean, that we are sober, and I'm here for you. Maybe that's enough, because people can assume, okay, well then there is something there, because getting sober and staying sober is not an easy task, and so obviously this person has credibility.
Yeah.
And when we talk about credibility as a leader, you know, that doesn't mean you haven't been through anything. I think that credibility as a leader means that you have been through stuff.
Yes.
And you're vulnerable about it. You're transparent about it, and you're willing to talk about it. And that's what endears you to people as a leader. So, which transitions into your question about philanthropy. I did not feel, and thankfully I've believed this since I got into business 40 years ago, because I was raised this way by my parents. I did not feel ever that it was proper for me to take money out of the community without putting something back, because all of us are consumers. We consume oxygen, we consume trees, we consume water. Well, we need to be contributors. Because we consume, we also need to be contributors. We need to give back some way. And so in business, I, as a business owner, was consuming people's paychecks. So the people that came in and went to my school or got their hair done in my salons, I was taking money out of their pockets.
Right.
Well, it never, ever sat well with me to not turn around and put money back out into the community to do good things. And so there's this thing called Generation G, and the G stands for generosity. And there are studies and so much detail that has gone into this, that 86% of consumers will decide whether or not to spend money with the business based on whether or not that business is putting money back out into the community. Meaning, if you're only interested in putting money into your own pocket, you know, I make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to spend money. I make that decision with my head, but I'm also going to make decision with my heart, with my gut. Do I like you? Do I trust you? And this has to do with whether or not you're spending money at a pizza parlor, or with a lawyer, or at a hair salon, or wherever we spend, at a restaurant, wherever we spend money. Yeah, they recycle, and that's important. Yes, they're good to their people, right? They're good employers. They don't abuse their people. They create a wonderful, safe environment for their people that work there. But are they also giving back? Are they putting money back out into the community? And so it was always important for me to do that. And not only important to do that, but to be very visible as I did that. And I know that there's a Bible belief system or something that, you know, if you give, you're supposed to do it anonymously. And I get that. You're supposed to be humble about it. But I also believe that we have to be visible, because that helps the nonprofits that we support.
Yes.
When you think of a nonprofit, they have to run their nonprofit organization as though they were a legitimate business, meaning that nonprofit pays rent, they pay salaries, they pay accountants, they have to pay for marketing. Well, if I can slash their marketing budget by being very vocal about this nonprofit organization, you know, hey, I have donated $1,000 to that charity. Well, again, I have a stage, and I have influence, And if my followers are like, wow, Winn donated money to that nonprofit, I've never heard of that organization. I've never heard of Children's Miracle Network hospitals. I've never heard of the Gary Sinise Foundation. I've never heard of Thirst Project. But Winn, who I like and I follow because his social media is always positive, it uplifts me. And now he's donating to this organization. Maybe I should look into that organization as well. By doing that, by me being vocal about that and visible about that, helps that nonprofit organization. And so our Paul Mitchell schools have been very, very involved philanthropically. For many years to date, we've raised over $24 million. And by the way, when I say,
Love it.
when I say uh, that we've raised 24 million, we've also donated 24 million. And that's important because, many of us have been to those galas where we paid $1,000 for our dinner, and to find out that only $100 went to the actual charity
Yep.
because 900 went to pay for the entertainment and for the food and for, I'd rather just, stay home.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to put on my tuxedo anyway. I didn't want to have to leave my house. Can I just give you the $1,000 and have that go directly to the charity? And so that was really important to us, that we didn't spend any of the money, that whatever we raised, we donated directly to the charities that we support. And it's a variety of charities. We want to touch as many issues or topics as possible. So there's something animal related. We raise money for Humane Society and Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, and for Morris Animal Foundation. So I got to partner with Betty White in doing that. We raised money for veterans through the Gary Sinise Foundation, Thirst Project. I love my good friend Marie Osmond, who founded Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, and we've donated millions of dollars to that incredible organization, which serves 10 million children a year that walk into hospitals, many of them without the means to pay for those services, to pay for that medical care, and yet it's all taken care of by Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And so there's a variety of different charities. We give thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. So there's a whole bunch of different topics and issues that we address, and it's a big part of our culture. It's about who we are.
Yeah.
Along with that same study about Generation G, studies will also show that people will decide whether or not I'm going to work for that company based
Yeah.
on whether or not they're giving back. I give my time. I give my talent and my resources. I show up. I give my heart and soul to this company. I want to know that the boss that I work for is giving back. That this boss cares about making a better lifestyle, not just for the people who work here and the customers, but for the community at large.
It makes a difference. I actually worked for a company once that they had partnered up with a research company for ALS, and I didn't know much about ALS. They were going to do it, and I just happened to be at a convention they were at that they ran, and they brought the person who was in charge of this, and he had ALS, and I had to meet them. I'm like, I ran. They left the stage. I had to run backstage to meet them because I wanted to know more. And I remember that when we were finally allowed at our location to raise money, because I knew I had met the person, it struck a chord within me because the people I looked up to, the leadership of the company, I trusted them, and they gave back. It wasn't just take. They gave it back. Where it's funny, we had raised the most money nationwide at our one little location because I was so adamant. I may have guilted people into it too, but it was so adamant.
Guilt is great. I love guilt. I'll
Right?
use that any chance I have.
But you're right. It makes a difference to have that you feel a part of something, right? And I think that people like us, who have gone through recovery, we're part of a network of a community that's already helping one another. So to help more people, and even the charities that you've partnered with that you support, they're also ones that we've already heard of, but by having a face, I give to the Children's Miracle Network. Honestly, I've known of Marie Osmond since I was this big, right? and I've known about it for years, but it wasn't until I met you because I know you, right?
Right.
It makes that difference where it's another face. So yeah, using your platform to be that philanthropic person again, to give to and to have philanthropy and make that difference, because there are so many out there, and what makes that difference, right, is that connection you have to other people. So you've done some amazing things, and especially helping out animals. We've got two, we've got our two dogs, so we're big on doing that. It was even one of them's a rescue, and I've learned that I will never get a dog again unless it's from a rescue,
Right.
because of the process I went through on that and helping them out. And I give, like, they have a fundraiser. I'm like, I'm all for it. Like, I'm like, we got to help these animals out. So it may, again, trusting the people who run it, whether they give back, and they're all volunteers. And even my wife works for a nonprofit who is always, she's like, her big line is always like, what do they want from us? We're a non-profit. we
Right. Right.
like, well, come on. So it makes a difference. So that's amazing. So where are your next steps? Like what do you have coming up that people can help follow you and learn more, and how can they maybe get involved in helping with what you've done, and or if they're seeking help, where do you recommend they go? What do they do? Like, what can we give more to people that are seeking help in some way or another?
Because again, on the topic of sobriety, many of us look at our sobriety as our superpower. I think I just saw a meme of a celebrity, and that was it. My sobriety is my superpower, and
Hmm.
I have thought that. You've said it during this interview that, gosh, the things that we're able to accomplish once we get that
Yeah.
in our past, and not only is it in our past as a crutch, but wow, this catapults us into arenas and into what we can now do because we have this power. And I really look at it that way. Like, it's the one of the best things that ever happened to me. The best thing that ever happened to me is becoming a dad.
Yeah.
Maybe the second best thing that's ever happened to me is that I was an addict, and that I became clean and sober. That is this incredible superpower, and I don't take that for granted. I'm very, very grateful for that. But that comes with responsibility. And the responsibility is that we have to do something. And for me, it's, yeah, I'm gonna always hustle to put money in my pocket, and I'm proud of that. There's
100%.
nothing wrong with wanting to make money. I think that people who say that they don't care to make a lot of money would lie about other things as well.
Hmm.
Money's a very, very good thing because
Yes,
it
it
gives
is.
us the ability to make a difference in the lives of other people. But the responsibility that comes with is that we again give back. So the longer I've been in business, I mean, 20, 30 years ago, of course, I was the janitor, I was the receptionist, I was the
Mhm.
accountant. You do everything. Now I don't think they even give me a key to my building. I don't even, I don't have a lot of responsibility there other than I get to put 80% of my time, and it's probably about that much of my time, into uh, being that ambassador, so to speak, where I've got this platform, this brand name, brand
Mhm.
awareness, and I can use it to raise money and raise awareness for causes that we are passionate about. And by the way, giving back doesn't mean that we always raise money. People think, well, if I can't raise $24 million the way Winn and Palm Mitchell schools have, then what's the point? It's not always about raising money, because you have to decide what, or figure out what your skill set is. Like I know people, they could show up every single day at a soup kitchen. They could show up every single day and work with people who are near death. They can
Mhm.
show up every single day and be there hands on. I'm not good at that. Like, I
Right.
remember, Marie Osmond had invited me to a children's hospital, and I was there, and I was a mess.
Yeah.
To see these sick children, I was I was not there, or I wasn't good to be there to give them hope and cheer them up. I was a mess. I was just, crying in the corner.
Yeah.
But I'm really good at raising money.
Yeah, we
I'll,
all
I'll,
we all have that. Exactly. There's
yeah,
that challenge we have. We're good at the superpower, and I volunteered years ago at a camp for kids who had cancer and their sibling. which was great. They built the memories. I was there for 12 days. I think I'm still recovering from the 12 days. So it's, and kudos to the people who did it week after week and volunteered. And I was, but again, I can talk about things. I can tell you what it was. I can tell you to give the money because I believe in it. But I get it. So I just want to touch base on one thing you said there. Our sobriety is our superpower. I always say that, I get to use my past to stand on to move myself forward, right? I get to look over those hurdles I never would have seen past by using what I've gone through. I know that as all the, I don't regret. I hate the word regret. I really do. Because I lived my life and I can't go back in time to change it. So why regret it? It is what it is. I don't think I would change anything that's happened. Because I know with that, I wouldn't have gone through this. I wouldn't have this. I wouldn't have had this kid at this time. Like all these things that would have that are in play now. Do you look back? Would you change anything about, or was that just you're here now and all the greatness you have now? I truly believe this all happened because of everything that led up to this.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. One of my big mentors is Marianne Williamson. In fact, you talked about how you had to go backstage to meet the person who had
ALS, yeah.
ALS, right? That's how I am. Like, it's not enough for me to sit in an audience. I have to stalk them. I gotta.
Right.
It's not enough that I read your book. I need to meet you. I need to volunteer for your organization. I need to get as close to you as I possibly could. And that was me with Marianne Williamson, 30 years ago. And since now she's on the cover of my book, she endorsed my book. But I remember her saying, and I was confused sitting in her audience when I heard her say it. Now I know what she meant. She said that sometimes when she would meet people, in her mind, she was thinking, gosh, the best thing that could happen to you is that you become a drug addict. Mm-hmm. But that could be the best thing that could happen to you. And I was like, what is she talking about? But what she meant was, meaning, I don't believe that people most people aren't wildly miserable.
Right.
Because when you're wildly miserable, then you'll do something about it.
Yeah.
Most people are just kind of mildly miserable, meaning, well, not a lot of happiness, but not a lot of pain either. And so I'll just plug along day after day after day. When you are wildly miserable, and what can make you wildly miserable is that it's the 11th hour here. You're an addict.
Yeah.
You could be dead. You could lose everything. That could be the best thing that ever happened to you. Sometimes a nervous breakdown is a spiritual awakening, because it forces you to go to your knees, so to speak. So now I know what she meant by that. And so I think that was me. That was my life, that I was wildly miserable. I was as low as I could go at that time in my life. Could I have gone lower? Probably, but thankfully I didn't. But it was low enough. Like I said, I was a very, very good drug addict. And so thankfully it took me to that place. And from there, everything that's happened since, there's no way I would ever go back and want to change any of that. There's no way that I would ever want to go back not that I wish addiction on people, but my gosh, mental health is at the top of everybody's list right now. And if it's not, it certainly should be.
Right.
I recently read something from the Center of Disease Control that 50% of people at some point will deal with some type of mental illness, whether that's bipolar, suicide thoughts, addiction. I mean, it's all there. And so for this to be the top of our list of conversations, a lot of the podcasts that I put out are people sharing their story of addiction and recovery. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks that the face of addiction is that guy living under the bridge. No. I interviewed Jason Waller, TV personality from the show The Hills.
Yeah.
I interviewed him and former Miss USA, Tara Connor. I mean, here she is, Miss USA, beautiful, beautiful woman, and yet face of addiction.
Right.
The face of addiction. And that was an important message, an important podcast for me to put out. It's a hot topic that I want to be. I want to be that resource to put that topic out as much as I possibly can. And I can't even remember what your question was, but hopefully I answered
You
some.
did, you did, because again, it was going back to would you give up all we've been through, and it's I have yet to meet somebody who says, "Yeah, I want to forget all that because it's who we are. It's what made us today."
You know what? I've interviewed people who have lost all four limbs in Iraq, stepped on a bomb and lost all of their limbs, or a couple of their limbs, and I've asked them, if you could go back and change the day where you stepped on that bomb, or when you were in that car accident and became a quadriplegic, would you go back and change that day? And the answer is always absolutely not.
Right. It's
Cedric King lost both of his legs. He said, when I was a jerk, I was an asshole as a father. I would be divorced if I hadn't stepped on that bomb. It made me a different husband, a different person, a different father. The best things that have happened to me because of the day that I stepped on that bomb.
yeah, it's amazing. That's one of the biggest things that I take when I talk to anybody about this. It's who we are, and it's changed us. Half the time, I think it's we needed it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I know that I drank because of my traumas that I had, and I needed it. It was I needed that shake, and if I didn't have that shake, I wouldn't be here today.
Right.
Period. Right. So, and then before we go, and I want to thank you for giving me so much of your time. We talk about mental health and we talk about addiction. How do you find it differs how we're talking about it now, which we do talk about a lot now, to when we first got clean and sober? Like even sober 5 years ago wasn't a big conversation. When I first wrote out loud in public, and I wrote a piece for the Huffington Post about my addiction and my recovery, I remember before I hit, enter for it to be published, my wife looked at me and said, "Are you sure you're ready to do this? Are you sure you're ready to broadcast this? Because everyone knows you as the fitness guy. This changes everything the second you press enter." And I'm like, "I'm sure." She goes, "Because in 2 hours, it'll be out there and you're going to be going to school to pick the kids up.
Yeah.
And every parent there will know about it."
Right.
And I remember getting up there. I'm like, "I'm good." And I got there and was standing there all by myself, waiting for the kids to come out of school. And somebody came up to me and said, "Wow, I just read your article and thank you, because after I read your article, I made a phone call because I need help."
Yeah.
And it was that. And funnily enough, another person came up on the other side to me who happened to be a parent in the school. I didn't know this yet. She was the therapist. I didn't know that when I was in rehab, the therapist that we had, her kid was in our school. She walked up to me and I didn't know she was there. She's like, "I just read your article," and I just sent it off to everybody in the rehab center that you went to, because wow, like this is years later and you wrote about this, and you know, we knew you'd be able to do something, you'd be on that stage. So, how do you find looking at it differently to talk about so openly now compared to when you first became clean?
Well, you share your personal stories, but that's not always how it is.
Right.
So yes, you have the people who say, "Wow, thank you so much, you're helping me," but then it also makes you a target. It's like, really, how dare you? I recently interviewed a guy, Sam Eaton, and his interview came out a couple of months ago. So when he came out about his road to recovery, he was a teacher. And so there was a
Mm,
campaign to get him fired as a teacher. This guy is not fit to stand in front of our kids because he is a recovering drug addict or a
right.
recovering alcoholic. And so sometimes it doesn't go that way. Sometimes it's like, wow, you expose yourself. Now you're a target for both thank you for helping me and providing hope for me, but also a target, like, how
How
dare you?
dare you?
So to answer your question, there's that stigma. There is that stigma. We talk about, we lost Twitch a
Yeah.
month ago. We have to do better. Why is there not an open conversation, and the stigma of being able to, the stigma of having to hide it and to just put on that face. And that's the story that's being told of how he was just a light for so many people, and people who knew him, and millions who never met him
Yeah.
personally, but they felt that joy and that light from him. And yet there was a story behind all of that.
Well,
And
that's
but the stigma, we can't talk about it. And so I just think, to answer the question, thankfully, because of podcasts like what you're doing. So Matt, thank you for this. And that many people are on that same path. That let's do whatever we need to do to remove that stigma.
mhm.
Doesn't make us weak. That doesn't
Right.
doesn't doesn't make us dangerous. Doesn't make us um, something that we need to fear, or we need to ban these people from our lives. Doesn't mean that it uncovers a part of ourselves that is shameful. It just makes us human. It makes us
Well said.
human, and that's a very, very beautiful thing. Everything is in a cycle. The seasons change, the tide goes out, the tide rolls in. Everything is in a season, including all the things that we go through in our lives. Everything is in a cycle, in a season, and we need to embrace. Yeah, the fall is beautiful when the leaves change, but is the snowfall beautiful too? Right? Is the summer heat beautiful too? Is every season beautiful? And once we can embrace all of that in the lives of our personal lives and in the lives of other people, maybe we'll start to remove some of that stigma so that we can talk about recovery and bipolar and thoughts of suicide and all kinds of things that inflict us.
Amazing. Absolutely. I hear here. I definitely, hopefully we'll get there because like you said, we lose them, especially something like a Twitch who was such a light for so many people, and then he's gone. And it was a news cycle for 2-3 days.
Hmm.
And then we don't talk about it again till the next time.
Right.
And that could be anywhere from, and really it's been between, I think, Robin Williams to Twitch. People have brought out
Yeah.
all these great things, and then, but so much could have happened from here to here, and we're not talking about it. So I want to thank you for talking about it today, and everything you've done and all you do, and the help you've given me. And I really appreciate you and all that you do. And I'm going to have links to everything that you've done that we've talked about, and all the philanthropy work you do. So if people want to help out and give, they'll be able to do it through there. And Winn, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and always being a friend, and being there for my emails and my text messages whenever I need you. And thank you, Winn, so much.
Wait, did you say thank you for being a friend? Is that because I'm on the set of Golden
So
Girls? Is that why you said that?
it's got to be subconscious, because I literally, for the last few minutes, throughout the last hour, that song has been playing in my head repeatedly, which is so funny because I actually have a T-shirt, and it's the Four Ladies, and it says "Stay Golden," and my friends all look at me going, "Do you really have a Golden Girls shirt
Oh,
on?"
come on.
And I'm like, "I do," and it's my
I think,
favorite shirt.
oh my God, sitting here, I think I have yeah, that's what people buy me. So I have a lot of,
Yeah,
I don't know yeah, I have a lot of Golden Girls shirts. So
it's one of
but you
the.
got to find that foundation that brings that joy and happiness. So maybe Golden Girls will be that for people too.
You know what? Listen, there'll only be one Golden Girls, and I think that I don't think there's a human being out there who in Western civilization who doesn't hear that song and just feel good,
Yeah.
right? So again, I want to thank you, and again, thank you for being a friend. And when I will talk to you soon, but again, thanks so much. Stick around for a few minutes afterwards. Again, my name is Matt Toad. This is Winn Claybaugh. This is Rise Up: Stories of Recovery, Renewal, and Resilience. Thank you so much, Winn.
Thanks, Matt.
You're listening to Rise Up: Stories of Recovery, Resilience, and Renewal with Matthew Tobe.